G'day, it's Kareem here again. It doesn't matter. Today I want to talk about something that's related to pretty much everything that I'm interested in terms of philosophy, martial arts, life, performance, and so on and so on. And that is the relationship or the intersection between self-esteem and character. There's been a massive focus on self-esteem since the 70s. The concept of self-esteem as we understand it today emerged and was developed in the 70s, focusing on how you feel about yourself, feelings of self-image and self-efficacy, and it came to be an enormous focus of our mental health programs and our educational programs. And though I'm certainly not one to poo-poo it entirely, it has value. It is an excellent warning system for when you're in need of calming down or revving up. It's an excellent warning system of when you're doing something right or wrong. It's an affirmation system, and it's certainly a nice reward for doing the right thing, for being, becoming, growing, changing, evolving, performing well. It's all of those things. It's effectively an emergent property, an ephemeral one, because it doesn't last. It can't last. But it's an emergent property of right action. It's akin to a temporary field effect in physics, electromagnetic field effects in physics that come and go, ionizing, static in the atmosphere, and so on. It's an indicator that something's changed, or something that's happened, an event, a change, an action, and has had an effect. And then, depending on whether your self-esteem goes up or down, relates to those events. Now, over time, self-esteem's become this this massive baseline, and it's become more important than what it's signifying. It's become more important than what it rests on. And we have encouraged people to have self-esteem. You need self-esteem. You've got to have self-esteem. And there's a fair question. I've certainly heard many people have heard Jordan Peterson ask it, why? Why do you deserve self-esteem? Why do you think you should have self-esteem? Why? Having self-esteem is an effect. It's a result. It's a causal relationship with action, with inaction. It has a relationship to the sequence of events. And it's ideally something that should be the result of something else, and that something else is character. You see, self-esteem without character is icing without the cake. It's sauce without the steak or the snags. It's meaningless, okay? It's fluff. It will not last. It's not even meant to last, even when you've got good reasons to have self-esteem, because your wife, your girlfriend, your family member, your best friend will piss you off. They will say something that will upset you. They will be thoughtless. You will be thoughtless to them. You will be in some way an imperfect being. You will make mistakes, they will make mistakes, and your self-esteem will plummet, as it should. Because why on earth would you do anything? Why on earth would you notice anything if you didn't feel bad sometimes? Feeling good all the time is a symptom of our drug-abusing, hedonistic society. Okay? We drink, we overindulge in food, we use recreational drugs, we indulge ourselves excessively, and as a result, we think we should feel good all the time. I'm here to say you shouldn't feel good all the time. In fact, if you want to have a useful life, you want to have a life that's deeply fulfilling and that actually makes you happy, stop trying to feel good all the time. It's not good for you. You need to feel negative sometimes. In fact, there have been recent studies that came out this year that showed that being angry, grumpy, sad, cynical and concerned about the world or about yourself is actually really healthy. That the happy feelings don't give you much in terms of further character development. They don't further improve your status at all. They're just a nice reward. They're a lolly at the end of the workout. There's some dessert after a day of frugal eating. You know, it's a reward. It's not something that you're meant to hover over possessively for the rest of the 24 hours that you're awake and asleep. You know, we go home, we have sweet dreams, we wish people sweet dreams. You can't always have sweet dreams. Sometimes it's your turn to have a nightmare. Sometimes you need that nightmare to grow, to process some stuff in your brain that couldn't happen if you had a sweet dream. Okay? Simple as that. So self-esteem's blown out into this giant thing with no substance at all and no meaning, because it's missing an essential element, which is character. Character's there whether you're sad, bad, good, happy, depressed, anxious. Character remains there. It is the bedrock upon which you may take refuge when you feel different, worse, better, whatever. When you're potentially going to get out of hand because you're feeling too good, character reins you back in. When you're feeling really bad, you think maybe you want to check out, okay? Want to start carving holes in yourself, whatever twisted kink human beings can inflict on themselves, character reels you back in. Character says, go for a walk, have a run, hit the bag, breathe, meditate. Watch a video about how much harder some other people have got it, okay? Get you a sense of your own tragedy in perspective. Self-esteem is like a froth on the top of the conscious mind. It's a foam, and it indicates states and changes. It's the same way as we see energetic effects in physics and chemistry. They don't last. They usually transition to more stable states. The stable state of physics for a human mind is character. It is a quiet peace, you know, somewhat cynical. I think cynicism is healthy as long as it's not, you don't become a total misanthrope, but a certain degree of cynicism or skepticism, a certain degree of peaceful anticipation of the shit to come, because there is shit to come. There's really good things to come, and there's some real crap to come. And you've got to be ready for it, even if it's infrequent. If you're fortunate enough to have a life where it's relatively infrequent, it's going to happen, and you need to be ready for it. And character is what allows you to not only get through that, but to still be happy, to still thrive through periods of adversity, moments, days, hours, weeks, months of adversity, and come out the other end a decent human being and not a messed up individual. I think part of the problem is that we have this attachment problem. Buddhists have gone on about it, beaten their drums about it for thousands of years, and they're quite correct in this respect. We're attached to having this self-esteem. You have to earn self-esteem. It's an earn, it's a reward, it's something that you get when you've done the right thing, when you've become the right thing, when you've acted correctly. Right action leads to right thinking leads to right action leads to joy. Okay, that's the way it works. Right action doesn't always lead to joy, though. Sometimes if you know, people who resisted the Nazi party in Germany and found themselves in jail were not in a joyful state. They joined other people in Auschwitz and Belsen and Treblinka, and many of them ended up dying. That was not joy. That right action led to suffering. So over and over you'll see that self-esteem as a foundation for who you are is not a good measure. It's a good way of determining events from moment to moment, from hour to hour, maybe day to day, but over the course of months and years, it's a shitty way to measure your life, because real happiness floats underneath that. Okay, it sits underneath that. It's solid. It's based upon a firm understanding of what it is to be you, and what it is to be the best version of you that you can make yourself. It's not about indulging your feelings at the time so that you feel better or enjoy yourself more. Okay, because in the long run it'll be harder and harder to sustain that. Much like heroin requires higher and higher doses, I feel that self-esteem often functions the same way as opiates. It becomes, you end up with a satiation problem, because you're constantly hedonic adaptation, your brain adapts to levels of chemistry. And if you don't think our behaviour and our reward system and the way the brain kicks in through the reward system is not chemical, then you don't understand how you work. Even in the brain, feeling good, feeling those bursts of self-esteem and validation and I feel validated. That's chemical. You're having a chemical response in your brain, dopamine, serotonin, and a whole host of nucleopeptides and neuropeptides that are making you feel a particular way on the basis of a response to your environment. It's evolution in action, okay? But self-esteem is just a messenger. It's a messenger to the king. The king is your character. It's what you've built during the times where you felt like shit. It's what you've built during the times where you've restrained your ebullience and you've not allowed your ego to run with that sense of self-esteem and turn you into a ponce, into a little numpty that makes people's lives miserable around you because you're so full of yourself. Unfortunately, that's where self-esteem can take you as well. It has a huge bearing on how we see ourselves, and it helps us create our value codes, our moral codes, how we think we should treat ourselves and others. So if you can have a lot of psychopaths have enormously good self-esteem, interviewing people in jail, they have great self-esteem. Fantastic, many of them, not all of them, but many of them. Many of the worst people in society have the greatest self-esteem. CEOs who can hatchet other corporations and deprive people of their jobs and ruin lives. Most of those people, men and women, have supremely good self-esteem. They're very good at their jobs and they're proud of it. Self-esteem has nothing to do with moral value unless you make it so, and it's character. It's the reflective philosophical sense of self that we all have that comes before you feel good or bad, that sits there and decides about the kind of thoughts that you're going to curate in your brain, that's going to lead to the kinds of feelings that you have, that leads to the kinds of actions that you have, and then you create that self-perpetuating cycle. Okay? So right thinking leads to right action leads to joy, or at least fulfillment, a sense of decency. See, if you get thrown at your blinker for doing